Hi, in today's session, we will look at a few reading strategies, approaches to the questions on the IELTS examination, as well as a few question types which constantly appear on the examination. We'll begin with the reading strategies. You might have come across with quite a number of different strategies online, such as skimming or scanning the passage, or using the keyword approach, or summarizing the passage and whatnot. Let's try and understand what these strategies are and also understand whether they work or they do not. The first one that you might have come across might have been skimming the entire passage. In this particular passage, it is often advised that you should just read one or two lines from the start or one or two lines at the end and a few lines in between or throughout the passage to just get a general sense of what the passage is about. And after this, you should go to the questions, and wherever you can find something similar or you can spot a question something similar to what you have read, to go back and identify or check the information that you need to answer that particular question. However, the common problem that appears on this particular reading strategy is that often you may not be accustomed to the kind of passage that it might be, and it may require a slightly detailed understanding or further information to understand what the passage is talking about. Also, in this particular strategy, there is a very common occurrence of a mistake when you use a keyword approach. The keyword approach is essentially nothing but finding a common word in the question as well as in the passage. And whenever you find that commonality or wherever you can find that particular keyword in the passage, you can mark or you can identify that there will be the answer. However, one has to be really careful while using the keyword approach, as it might so happen that one particular word may be used at more than one places. In that case, there is a chance of a mistake. Another problem with this particular aspect of skimming is that we've often seen in class that when students have skimmed and gone through the questions, while finding or attempting the questions or finding the answers, they still have had to go back to read the entire passage to make proper sense of it or to identify the answers. The second approach or the second strategy which is available is summarizing each paragraph. There might have often been videos or sessions or information which says that you should read each paragraph individually, and then you should try and understand what that particular paragraph is or means. You should try to highlight the important points which you think are important, and you should do these for all those passages. The problem over here, however, is that there are approximately 9 or 10 passages or paragraphs which are asked on one single passage in the academic task. And when you are focused on only one particular paragraph and then moving on to the next one and focusing on that, you often are reading the entire paragraph in silos. This often causes a problem when you are looking at questions, as you may not try and exactly remember as to what this particular or what that particular paragraph was about, which again results in you having to go through the entire passage at once. And thus, although this might seem a slightly better approach compared to the skimming, it might not be the best approach, as you also tend to lose a little more time in trying to individually capture the meaning or understand the meaning of each and every paragraph. The next approach that we have is reading the entire passage and attempting questions. This is the most common approach that students have, or even when we take a pre-assessment test, when we ask students to solve on their own, they often read the entire passage and then they go to the questions. Often, the outcome of this is that in the 20 minutes that you can allot for one particular task or reading passage, they are not able to attempt all the questions. After which, when we commonly ask them that when you read the passage and then you read the questions, were you able to recall or were you able to identify where that particular information was? And the common answer is no. The common answer is that despite reading the passage and going through the questions, we again had to read the entire passage to make sense of the passage and to identify where the questions are. So although this is pretty straightforward, it again is not the best alternative, as the first time when you read the passage has been made completely irrelevant or becomes completely useless. The reason why this happens is When you are reading the first passage, or when you're reading the passage in its entirety without reading or going through the questions, you are not really sure as to what is the kind of information you are looking at on that particular passage. And thus, while you're reading, you are capturing or you're trying to understand everything, you don't really know which information is relevant or important and which is not. And thus, there is an alternate approach. In this approach, you can go through the questions first and then you can read the passage. The way this works is, whenever you come across a new passage, you quickly go through the questions which are pertaining to that particular passage in about 45 seconds to 1 minute. After this, you can go to the passage and start reading the passage from the top. And whenever you come across certain information which you might have read in the questions, you will automatically become alert or you will take cognizance of that particular information. And you can underline it or you can highlight it or mark it there and there itself. This you can do for the entire passage that you read. And now after this, when you go back to the questions, it might become a lot more easier to identify the exact place where you had read that particular information pertaining to the question, and finding that information in the passage becomes easier as you have already highlighted or marked this. This, in my opinion or in my experience, has been one of the most easiest methods or strategies that you can adopt while attempting the reading comprehension passage on the IELTS examination. This is useful for both the academic as well as the general examinations. This not only helps you to save the time in going to and fro to find information, but also helps you arrive at the answers in a much easier manner. Using this approach, there is a further couple of things that you must understand, and now let's try and look at the approach that you can use using this strategy to solve your reading comprehension questions. While using the strategy of reading the questions and then reading the passage, one has to remember a couple of very simple things, as blindly using this strategy may not always give the optimal results. Any reading passage on the reading section of the examination, irrespective of academic or general, can be bifurcated into two types of passages. One, passages with match the list of heading questions, and passages without the match the list of heading questions. Now, what are these match the list of heading question types? In this particular question type, you will be provided with a list of headings as well as paragraphs. The paragraphs will be in a number or an alphabetical format, and each alphabet would represent a particular paragraph on the passage. The objective in this particular task is to match this list of heading with an individual paragraph for which it captures or summarizes the information that the paragraph is trying to convey. This needs to be done for all the questions which are asked on this particular question type. The key over here is that to solve this particular question type, one needs to read only that particular paragraph to identify as to which heading would match that particular paragraph. And there is no need to know the information in the preceding or in the succeeding paragraph. And for this particular question type, since you need to solve each paragraph on its own, there is no need to know the information on the rest of the paragraph or what the rest of the questions pertain to. And thus, whenever in your examination you come across a particular question type which is match the list of headings, then there is absolutely no need to go through the entire list of questions and then read the paragraph. In fact, whenever you come across this particular question type match the list of headings, you can drop everything else. You can first solve this particular question type, then you can look at the remaining questions, read those questions, and then go back to the passage and read the passage. This will help save you a lot of time, as after having solved this particular question type, you can go to the rest of the questions and you can come back to the passage, and you don't even have to read the entire passage since you've already read most of the paragraphs. You just have to read the rest of the passage, and then you will be in a position to attempt the questions, since you will be able to recall a lot of information pertaining to the paragraphs which you had already read. The other kind of passages are the ones which do not have the match the list of headings. For these question types, you can straightforward read the entire list of questions or entire question set, and then you can come back to the passage, read the entire passage, mark the places which you think or which you could recall were present in the question, and go ahead solving the particular passage. We will now try to look at the individual question types that appear on the reading section, and we will see how best to attempt each of those question types. Before we begin with the question types, we'll take a moment to look at a few very important things on the reading section. There are certain things to remember which will go a long way in helping you for the reading section. The first of which is read the instructions carefully. Now, although this may seem very simple, very often it happens that students completely skip the instruction part, assuming that they know what the question task is. Please remember to read the instructions carefully as it will clearly outline what is expected of you on that particular question type. Also, for sections which may be new or which may require a little bit of logical deduction on the general examination as well as academic, reading the instructions will clearly outline how you need to proceed with those particular questions. The second thing which is very important is read the questions carefully. Now, I know you might think that since it's the reading section, it is obvious that you have to read the questions carefully. However, what happens is, despite many a times reading the question, people often do not understand what is it that the question is trying to ask and often assume that they know what they need to do on that particular question. Thus, kindly read and check what is it that you are expected to do on that particular question and accordingly go ahead and find the answer. The last but not the least and the most important point is do not add additional information to the passage. It often happens that when a passage is very simple or is something that we have additional information or prior information about, we tend to assume certain things on the passage which may not exist. Hence, remember that whatever information is mentioned on the passage, that is the absolute truth. You cannot add any information, also you cannot put forth your own assumptions or deductions on that particular passage. Thus, I reiterate that do not add any additional information to the passage. The passage is sacrosanct. In our next session, we will look at one of the most important question types to appear on the examination, which is match the list of headings. We will go through a few concepts, look at the tips and techniques required to solve questions related to this topic, and also solve a few questions on this particular topic.